All right, today we're going to dive into Generation Z. They're the newest and biggest generation on the scene. But to really get them, you have to understand the world that made them. And it's a world that has gone through some massive cultural shifts. We're breaking down the big ideas from James Emery White's book, Meet Generation Z. Let's get into it. So let's start with just one number, 25.9%. That's how much of the US population is Gen Z. And get this, that makes them the largest generation in American history. Yep, bigger than the millennials and even bigger than the baby boomers. But this is about way more than just demographics. Gen Z was born into a reality that had fundamentally changed. They are the very first generation to grow up in what the book calls a truly post-Christian world. So what does that actually look like? Well, the book argues that if you really want to understand Gen Z, you first have to get your head around this huge, seismic shift in our society's relationship with religion. Specifically, we're talking about the explosive rise of a group that researchers call the Nones. So, who exactly are these nuns? It's actually super simple. They're the folks who, when they get a survey asking about their religious identity, they don't check a box for a specific faith. They check the box for none. Now, this doesn't automatically mean they're all atheists. It just means they're unaffiliated. And to see just how dramatic this shift has been, just look at this timeline. For decades, the number of nones was pretty small, kind of hovering in the single digits. But then, between 1990 and 2012, it just skyrocketed, climbing to almost 1 out of every 5 Americans. And it was just getting started. Because in just 2 more years, the trend got even more pronounced. By 2014, it had jumped to nearly 1 in 4 adults. But here is the real kicker. For adults under 30, it was a staggering 1 in 3. This is the generational wave that set the stage for Gen Z. So here's the bottom line, and it's a big one. The religiously unaffiliated are not some fringe group anymore, not even close. They have become the single largest religious bloc in the entire country, even bigger than Catholics. This is the new landscape. Okay, so this brings up a huge question, right? What on earth is driving this change? Why is this happening so fast? Well, the book has this really fascinating theory that it calls the squishy center. The squishy center? What's that? Well, picture about half of the country that doesn't really have super strong convictions one way or the other. They're not deeply religious, but they're not hardcore secularists either. Their beliefs are kind of soft, changeable. You could say they're pliable. They tend to just drift toward whatever the main cultural current is at the time. The analysis basically sets up this cultural spectrum. On one end, you have your committed secularists. Let's call that about 25% of the population. And on the complete opposite end, you've got the devout believers, another 25%. Think of these two groups as the cultural anchors on either side. And right there, in between them, is that squishy center. Now, this visual really nails the core idea. For a long, long time, the cultural pressure, the default setting of society, gently pushed that middle group toward religion. But the book argues that today, that pressure has flipped. The cultural winds are now blowing in the other direction, pushing that big middle group toward secularism. And that's what is swelling the ranks of the Nones. So, let's bring this all back to Gen Z. Why does this all matter? Well, because this new cultural landscape, this world where the nuns are a dominant force, it's the only world Gen Z has ever known. They are its first true natives. And let's be clear, they are not just Millennials 2.0. They are fundamentally different. It's a whole new ballgame. We're talking Snapchat over Facebook, Lorde over Lady Gaga. This isn't just a minor software update. It's a whole new operating system. So what really defines this generation, born right into the middle of this cultural shift? The book points to 5 key traits. Let's walk through some of the most important ones. First up, they are recession-marked. Think about this. Many millennials grew up in the relative optimism and economic boom of the 90s. But Gen Z's formative years? They were defined by the anxiety and the uncertainty of the Great Recession. You can see that anxiety baked into their culture. It's really no surprise that huge blockbusters like The Hunger Games or Divergent, stories about teens being left alone to survive in a broken dystopian future, connected so deeply with them. But don't mistake that anxiety for pessimism. It actually made them incredibly resourceful and deeply entrepreneurial. A stunning 42% of them expect to work for themselves one day. They're determined to build their own security in what feels like an insecure world. Okay, number 2, and this is a huge one. They are Wi-Fi enabled.
This is the first generation that has literally never known a world without a supercomputer in their pocket. They have no memory of a time before Google, before being connected to everything all the time.
And this constant connection isn't just a part of their lives, it is their lives. The average teenager spends almost 9 hours every single day consuming media. It's not an accessory to their world. It is their world.
Third, they are the most multiracial generation in American history. And for them, diversity isn't some corporate initiative or a value that needs to be taught. It's just reality. It's what their classrooms look like, it's who their friend groups are. It's just normal.
The data here is just undeniable. We are looking at the leading edge of a permanently changed America. And when you combine that with the fact that they're all Wi-Fi enabled, it means their social circles aren't just diverse locally, they're often global. So you put it all together. What happens when the largest, most diverse, and first truly post-Christian generation takes the wheel? They're recession-marked, so they're anxious but entrepreneurial. They're Wi-Fi enabled, so they're globally connected, and they're navigating a world without one single dominant cultural story. They're already building our future, and to understand them, well, that's to understand what that future is going to look like.